everyone, welcome. My name's Jo and I'm the CEO of NaviStar Legal, and today I am joined by Angela Grant. Angela, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Yes, happy Friday as well. Yes. Angela is the Chief Legal and Innovation Officer at SME Insurance Group, and she's just going to talk to us a little bit about, I guess, innovation, business, and how she, and about her career and how that has changed her to think in a different way. Angela, thank you so much for joining us. The first thing we were just talking about is your title. Tell me a little bit about your title. What does it even mean?
Yeah, it is an interesting title. So I am the Chief Legal and Innovation Officer for SME Insurance Group. And I'm basically responsible for all things legal and partnering and collaborating and finding things that are innovative for the company from a business perspective. So partnering with all of my colleagues who do different aspects of insurance, as well as my IT partners, to make sure that anything that's in the marketplace that would be a good fit for us, we are able to bring to market. So that's my role.
And that's quite different because, you know, there's legal innovation, right, which is innovation of the legal industry.
Right.
How does what you do, how is it different? What is the difference between legal innovation and the chief legal and kind of innovation officer element that you're doing?
So it's important that I, obviously legal first, so I am an attorney by trade, but I'm also a business person. And so I have spent some time in the insurtech space, which is really the marriage of insurance and technology. And once I was recruited to work for SME Insurance Group, I brought that knowledge with me because insurance is changing. People are purchasing online, they're able to buy on their phones, a home insurance policy, an auto policy, even life insurance is available that way now. And it's important when you're doing anything innovative that it's also legal and compliant. So it's sort of one-stop shopping. You get to come to one place to pitch your concept, and I validate and help you create, whether it's one of my colleagues or I'm just talking in the marketplace, new ideas and ways to do insurance that are still respectful of the regulatory environment that we're in. So insurance is very regulated, just like banking. And in the US, we don't have just one system, we have 50 plus. So for every state that we have here in the US, there's a whole set of rules that's special for that state. So being innovatively compliant and compliantly innovative is important.
Yeah, because I guess it's similar to the banking sector in the regulation element, and right. It therefore requires that input or that structured, compliant brain that's able to go, no, you need to be done this way. How do you marry? Because this is what's interesting for me. How do you marry the kind of innovative, fast-paced, like, hey, we should be doing it like this and doing it now, that kind of risk-averse entrepreneurial angle with the compliant, regulatory, legal aspect? How do you manage that?
So that is not always easy. That's a great question. I am probably on a scale from 1 to 5, 5 being the riskiest and 1 being no risk. I'm probably a 4. And so, and I'm a 4 because of my prior experience being able to apply that to my current day situation. So I already have a good understanding of how most of the states would respond to something. And when I say states, I mean the departments of insurance, the regulators. And we have to be respectful of the existing framework that is insurance, but also push the boundaries to bring new things to market and to really focus on the consumer. So if something's good in the marketplace, that means that consumers are getting what they need, which is what the regulators want. So being able to be collaborative allows me a little more freedom and not being afraid. Because you're going to have to make adjustments and mistakes will be made, but if you don't try, you never know. So it's about figuring out, if not this, then these other 2 options could work. Being able to be creative and open.
How have you, because it's a topic that keeps coming up for me every time I'm speaking, because I spoke to somebody yesterday who was like, I have to have like an innovation entrepreneurial day, and then I have to have a legal compliance day. How do you manage to marry the two? Do you manage to marry the two? Do you have to separate these two aspects of your role?
Yeah, so there are some days that are just legal work days where I have to block out time and have to read through contracts, or I have to, work through a business problem or some sort of issue that's come to my attention that needs just a conservative view of how best to protect the company. So we have our reputation, we have our brand, our parent company, Covea, out of Paris, France, is also always top of mind because we want to make sure that whatever we're doing improves the company, whether from a profitability standpoint or reputation, and mostly both, right? So some days I do have to plug into just the legal part of my job, but then there are other days that I can marry the two. So I'm here to be of service to others. So whatever comes across my desk is what I work on. And then I, of course, have my whole long list of things that I'm constantly working on and pushing us forward on. And then also sometimes pulling us back and say, no, we probably don't need to do that. And here's why. But I am not the Department of No. And any attorneys that I train, I try to make sure they understand that we should be business partners with the departments or the companies that we serve so that everyone wins.
I think that's, and many people can say that, but it's not necessarily that you're managed, like that we can manage to do that all the time, because it is, especially in a regulatory environment, I imagine that a lot of your ability to be a number 4, when I would say most lawyers are probably a number 1 on that scale.
Yeah.
How have you developed that? How have you developed that business acumen, or what would you call that?
Yeah. So my entry into law was non-traditional. So I worked for almost 10 years before I ever did law school. And I think a big part of why I'm able to be on the 4 instead of the 1 side of the scale is because I understand the business that I serve. There's one thing to be able to understand the law, read the law, apply the law, and give alternatives, which lawyers are trained to do. You could do this or you could do that. We wouldn't recommend this, but if you do this, you'd have to do it this way. What business is always looking for is an answer. So because I started in the insurance industry, non-lawyer, and I've learned the trade, especially the property and casualty side, I don't know all of things insurance. I know about my part of the industry. It gives me more confidence to dig into matters and really question to the void, and at the same time weave in the law where it matters to try to figure out the best answer. But it's something that I've learned over time and didn't just come overnight. And I really think taking the time to know the business that you are actually providing your legal services to is the only way to do that. Learn all you can about what your customers, your clients, business is. Collaborate, sit in and just listen. Lawyers like to talk. We should be doing a lot more listening and less talking, because the more you listen and learn, the better value you give to your client base.
Having had already you've had quite a different, what's the word I'm looking for? Into the legal practice. You've had quite a different route, and also you have a family as well. So you've raised children. Like you've got a quite I don't know what the word you would use. Like quite different. How has that affected your career? Has it affected your career as a woman and a mother?
Oh my gosh, yes. I am trying to think of what word I would use for that as well. I would say patterned. It's sort of patchwork quilty. And so I am my children are adults now, young adults, 26 and 21. But when I was in law school, when I first started law school, my son was 3 or 4. And so I was studying while he was playing at the park. And then I had my daughter while I was in law school, took 2 years off with her. And so families always jumped in front, of course. And then while I was finishing law school, the company I worked for at the time chose me to be a part of an integration team. So I was traveling between Los Angeles and Dallas during my last few years of law school, writing lots of emails at the end of the semester asking for forgiveness for not being in class. I really learned how to be here now, how to focus on whatever was in front of me at the time. And if it was reading 10 chapters for a class that I had, I was reading those 10 chapters and consuming the information so I'd be prepared. So I was always prepared, but not always present, physically present. So I had to really work on, if it was my son had a soccer game, I was focused on being at the soccer game. If I was at work talking about some project or strategy, I focused on that. If it was trying to get to the airport, to my next travel engagement, I was focused on that. So I really learned early on the importance of doing what is in front of you and doing that well, because the rest of the things you can't have any control over. If you go too far ahead, you get overwhelmed. And so I really just focused on, you know, again, be here now, which is really a thing. If there's a book called Be Here Now, in fact, by Ram Dass, it's a great book.
Great.
Yeah.
I was actually going to ask you later, are there any books you would suggest? So there we go.
Yep.
Books or suggestions. I mean, one thing I noticed about you when we had our first conversation, it was like, you have, and when I ask people about values and beliefs and philosophies, you're like, hey, look, this is, and you've got a very philosophical way of seeing the world, and the be here now. I mean, not that that's a philosophy, that's a kind of reality, but
right.
You're very learned in that way, and it sounds like that's been a real part of your success in juggling all these things, because that's no mean feat to juggle children. Not that I have children, but I know I see it with people juggling children, travel commitments, you've got study in there, like that's crazy. So are there any things that you would, all right, what would you say to your younger self?
Oh my gosh.
About how you are going to deal with things, or how you want to deal with things, how you best deal with things. Is there anything you're looking back, you go, oh, if only I'd realized?
Wow. You know what? I probably would have said no a little more often to things that made my plate too full. So, you know, I'm that can-do kind of person. Oh, yes, I can do it. And even if I can do it, the question is, should you do it? And so if I could go back in time to my younger self, I probably would have turned down a few opportunities to do extra things, because it would have provided me more time to focus on the things that were already on my plate. My mother used to always say, you're stretching yourself too thin. And I would be like, I'm 25. I can do this.
At 25, you can do this.
Yeah. You know, so it's not about, can you do it? It's more, should you do it? And so I would have run the, should I do this measure through some of those things that I've decided to do because I just could do them, and I'm young and it doesn't matter. And now I'm 51. And if I were to look back and say, would I change anything? Fortunately, I can say I would not, because but for those things, I wouldn't be here. But I probably could have said no a few times where I said yes.
Yeah, that's a powerful lesson. The ability to be able to say that, and there's a strength in saying that. Like there's a boundary almost, and like, no,
right.
this is my time. But it sounds like you are quite able to say no. The fact you're able to kind of, you're at law school, you're having a child through law school. To me, that's an ability to be like, okay, now it's family time. That's powerful. Right. But yes, doing more of that. I totally hear you on that. One of the things we were talking about previously was you're supporting other insurance business, like you don't just kind of support your business, you also talk to other people about their ideas, don't you? You kind of act, yeah. I don't know whether I'd say mentor, whether it's unofficial or official, but tell me a little bit about that, some of the things that you talk to smaller businesses about in the insurtech industry.
Yeah, so I've met great people in the industry on the regulatory side, on the traditional insurance carrier side, on the insurtech startup side. And so I get phone calls and people reach out and they just have questions about different things. Could be an idea. Do you think this makes sense in the US? I get calls from people who are in other countries thinking about coming to do business in the US. smaller businesses here in the US who are thinking about going to market with something. And so usually what I'm listening for is, how is your product going to add value to the marketplace? And who are the customers that you are going to be serving? Is your customer another business? Is your customer an actual consumer, a purchaser of goods? Or are you a part of the data or transaction that leads to the purchase or the renewal of an insurance policy? So, you know, it's interesting how the industry has changed over time. I remember when fintech happened years ago, I was so jealous, and I was like, gosh, when is tech coming to insurance? Because we need some improvement, some twists and turns, and not to throw away what we have, but just to make what we have better. And so, yes, I talked to lots of different startups, entrepreneurs. Sometimes I have to say, you know, that's just not going to work here in the US. Or I'll say, you might want to do that a different way, or you might want to change what you're doing to make it fit better with the model or the line of insurance that you're trying to do. So yeah, insurance is what I do for sure.
Presumably those conversations help you with your innovation role, because when you're seeing people and you're like, oh yeah, you're doing it that way, or yeah, we could do that. Do you ever think, hey, we could use you here, or we could work with you in a certain way? Or is it like sometimes they're just too early doors?
Yes, you know, we meet with different folks all the time. We partner and collaborate and see where things would be good for our business. We have a couple things that we're working on now that we potentially could bring to market next year, because we're in the auto and home insurance space as well as landlords. So we do, you know, products that consumers purchase, and we use independent third-party agencies to do that. So we're not direct to consumer. We're very traditional on the one hand from a distribution perspective, because that's how insurance started, was people coming to an expert in the industry to purchase insurance. And then, you know, over the years, it became more online or over the phone. And so we respect that part of the distribution model for insurance. But then we want to make sure that things are accurate the first time. So we use data for that. So there's always partnerships, opportunities that exist for data. And then also that the tools that we use to bring our products to market or to service them or to adjudicate them if there's a claim, that those are transactionally based, in that they provide us accurate information we can use later. You heard me say accurate twice. So accuracy is important, because if you make a mistake in insurance, that means you either over or undercharge on the premium, the price the customer pays, or you didn't pay the right amount on the claim. Those are both no buenos, bad scenarios. So, yeah.
And I don't know if this is true, but I imagine, I mean, the situation that is happening at the moment, I will not be referred to by name by me, but how is that impacting the insurance industry at the moment? And secondary, how is it affecting you individually? I mean, I'm keen to hear both.
Yeah, that's a loaded question. So
especially with the landlord, I'm just thinking you know, you're dealing with landlord. I mean, I imagine home and car insurance probably not so affected, but the landlord insurance, I imagine may start having a skew to it.
Yeah, I hope not. I really hope not. You know, the thing we will not name is very personal. It's about hygiene. It's about decision making, and we're not in the retail space. We're not in the commercial space, so we don't really have the business interruption pain points that are sort of out there these days. People are driving less, but people who are driving faster is what we've seen. And so while fewer people may be driving, the ones who are driving are not driving as carefully as they should. So we'll see how that plays out in the market. I would say, you know, from just a global perspective, economies are impacted. Insurance is one of those economies that is impacted, and we are working with our trade associations all the time to try to make sure that we stay abreast of what's going on in the industry from a legal and regulatory perspective. And we're just trying to maintain our financial stability, as all companies and industries are at this point, and then also thinking about consumers and our employees. And so we are operating under a shelter in place here in California, and our companies in the Bay Area, we've had a shelter in place even before the state of California issued it. The Bay Area issued one. So I think we've been under a shelter in place about 5,200 days. Kidding. It feels like a long time.
This is more than one of you in the house, right?
Yeah, it's tough. And so from a professional perspective, we're just, our employees are top of mind. We've done a really good job of transitioning everyone home. Our IT department did a great job. We're on Microsoft Office Suite. And so we use Teams. Teams is my new phone, my office phone, because we just dial each other on Teams. We video on Teams. We have all of our meetings that way. So it really has helped a lot. And we have just a great network of leaders who stay in regular contact with employees. Marcus Linden, our president and CEO, has regular meetings with the leaders as well as the employees. He keeps us motivated, and we're going to power through just like everyone else. On a personal level, I had to move out of, as I was telling you, my fancy loft apartment area because my daughter, who's a college student, had to come home because of the thing we won't name, and finishing her schooling online probably until next January. And so I had to move back to suburbia. So I'm back in the Sacramento area, living in the suburbs, and it's good. I mean, I have an office, at home office now. Before I was working at my kitchen island in the middle of my loft, and my daughter was crashing on my sofa. So things are much better now.
Yeah, things are a bit more organized, a little bit more spacious.
Yes.
One of the things we talked about, like personal, how are you, like, what are your personal routines or things that you're doing to, I was going to say raise yourself to a higher standard. That's probably not the right phrase, but it's like to keep yourself going, to keep yourself focused. What are you doing? And what do you usually do versus what are you doing now? I'm curious to hear the change.
So I would say I'm sleeping more. I go to bed much earlier, but I also get up much earlier. I wake up usually at 5 and try to meditate every morning. My goal is to do a 21-day meditation. Deepak Chopra has, a friend of mine had started that, and I had begun that journey with her in that group, but then I moved. And so I had to, focus on be here now and pack up to move. But meditation is a big part of my mindfulness, being able to stay steady, and then also having just a regular schedule. Waking up like I'm going to work. Now I don't dress like I'm going into the office necessarily. My new routine is sweatshirts and yoga pants, which is nice and comfortable. But I do try to wake up at the same time every day. Yeah, exactly. I dressed up today for you.
Yeah.
I hope.
Me too.
That's very fancy. And then I have a Peloton bike that I just purchased at the end of the year. So my Peloton is a great reprieve, and they're not paying me, but they do have great classes. And other than just the cycling classes, they have yoga and strength training and all kinds of things. And so I've had to learn how to practice more self-care at my house. My old self-care would be to go to a yoga studio or go have brunch with friends or something outside of the house. And so now it's, finding things that are self-care related in the house. I do happy hours with friends where we toast virtually with our glasses of wine. And, I read more. I'm not really watching a lot of TV. I binge watch sometimes something on Netflix, but otherwise just getting back to me, which is pretty nice.
Sounds like a really healthy shift. And people always saying kind of going back to the normal. It's like, oh, actually, I'm a better person right now. Let's keep things.
Not a bad new normal. This is pretty nice.
There's this very little travel, and that makes things a lot easier, doesn't it? I mean, for me, I never travel that much anyway, so it's not that different, and I'm very much a hermit. But there's a like the self-care regime and being able to do things in a different kind of pace because everything
Yes,
seems to have slowed down somewhat. Is
that's
feeling
very true.
feeling great. I I am so happy that we met. It's so funny when we first met, and I don't know what time it is there, but it must be like 6 a.m. or something right now. When we
It's 7 something, 7 a.m.
okay, so when we first spoke, you were like, "Yeah, it's 5 o'clock in the morning," and I'm like, "Thank you so much for having this chat with me so early, and just for being such a breath of fresh air." Because that was my initial
Oh,
reaction to you. It's like talking to lawyers who have a message that is different, and that can really understand business is such a passion for me. Just like talking to people and go, "Oh, tell me how you did this." Like I could probably pick your brains all day, but I'm not going to do that.
okay.
I'm gonna thank you so much for being here. If people want to get in contact with you, so if they're an insurtech startup or if they're a lawyer and they're like, "Hey, tell me a little bit more, tell me about your situation," how can they get in contact with you?
So the best way to contact me would be through LinkedIn. I also don't work for LinkedIn, but it's a great way to stay in touch with people. And so I'm on LinkedIn at Angela Leanne Grant, my full legal name. So if you look me up, I will confess I have a lot of messages I've not responded to lately just because I've been busy relocating and getting adjusted to this new normal that we're in while we're giving the globe a break. So.
Me too. That's my confession too. But we get to it, don't we? LinkedIn is
Yeah,
there's something about communication on LinkedIn that forgives a little bit of a lag time, whereas emails, it's like,
right.
I didn't reply to my email and it's 3 hours late. And it's like, oh, you haven't replied to my LinkedIn and it was 3 weeks ago when I emailed you. I'm like,
Right.
sorry, because I don't always check it. So I'm with you. Angela, thank you so much for providing us with your wisdom today. Thank you so much for being there bright and early. Congratulations on your new place of work and living. And yeah, I look forward to following you and seeing what's going on LinkedIn as well.
Well, thank you, Joe. Thanks
Thank
for reaching
you.
out, and I hope you have a fabulous evening.
Fabulous. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.